Alex Hormozy spent years inside Christian apologetics, chasing every argument, every defense of the faith. But after all the study, the therapy, and the searching, he walked away. In this video, I want to unpack why. Not to mock faith, but to show why his decision makes sense, why the cracks in Christianity are real, and why atheism and agnosticism offer a clearer, freer way to live.
When I was like 19 or 20, I became a born-again Christian. The dunk, the whole thing was like, oh my God, life's amazing, Jesus is great. And then I ended up falling away from that because I was like, I don't know if this is true. And then I spent the next 5 years dedicated to apologetics, which is defense of faith, of the Christian faith. So just learning the arguments around like why Christianity like is true, right? I ended up not believing in it, and I can give a variety of reasons, but I'll give you the simplest one. Hopefully I'm not insulting anyone. This is just my belief that I'm sharing, which is one of the strongest arguments for Christianity against other world religions is that other world religions say like, if you go to the good place, so if you do a good job, you go to the good place, right? And fundamentally it's a hard paradigm because it means that like at what point are you 51% good versus 49%? Should I have just held one more door open and I would have gone to the good place forever, right? Not even talking about like finite circumstance and creating infinite outcomes, but like whatever. And so if you can draw that line, then it kind of makes it ridiculous, right? It like kind of breaks down on the like be a good person system, right? And so that's all worldviews with the exception of Buddhism and Christianity. With Christianity, they're like, you don't have to be good, you just have to have faith. And if you have faith in Jesus, then you go to the good place, right? And so the reason that for me, fundamentally, I didn't believe in that was because you actually create another false binary, which is believe or not believe. When in reality is to what extent you believe. It's how hard you believe. And again, you create another 50% line, which is should I believe 1% more? And then I would go into the good place forever, right? So anyways, the point is that I studied apologetics for a long period of time. And then I was really sad. And I was just like, fuck being sad. And I was like, fuck happiness. I was like, I'm just going to do stuff that I think is cool. And that was like the first break in the chain for me. My slogan to myself was actually just fuck happiness. And that was wildly freeing because I stopped judging myself for not being happy. And then I was just like, oh, I'm like, I'm unhappy. I'm like, cool, whatever. And I just kept going. And all of a sudden it just like stopped mattering to me. Like, I don't think about it. I genuinely, like, I don't think like, does this make me happy? Does it not? Like, I don't think about it.
You just do what you want to do in the moment?
Just do whatever I feel like doing. And it's not like it's like all short term, like all pleasure seeking, whatever. Like I still have a long term perspective of like, this is what I want to build.
Yeah.
Like I want to write these books. I want to build these courses. I want to do this stuff. But it's like, those are things that I enjoy. So that's what I do.
I love it. That's great.
All right.
I don't have anything to say there.
No, I mean, I had questions, but now I know the answers to them just based off here.
I'm just listening.
Yeah.
Like, I'd rather just listen and not say anything.
I know.
You know? Like, I don't want to mess it up. But then I created a belief that now I'm going to mess it up. So
Oh, God. Why does it matter, man?
Why does it even matter that I messed it up to begin with?
It doesn't. And you can't mess it
And
up.
then the comments are going to be, Greg messed it up. And then they in the comments, why does that matter?
I know it's crazy stuff, but like I think that like if you want to, like you can't do what 99% of people are doing if you want to be in the 1%. Yeah. Like fundamentally. And so like you have to have like what I would consider like maybe uncomfortable conversations, just be like, that's okay. Like, cool. Like I'm going to do my thing. And then they're like, and the thing is a lot of times if you just make your statements of like, this is how I believe, like people feel like you're attacking them, especially if you articulate it well. Because they're like, well, I don't, I'm like, cool. Like, I don't give a shit. Like do whatever you want. Like it's all good to me. And so which is why I don't talk about it as much publicly.
His verdict sounds honest and clear. The saved versus lost frame depends on belief strength. A sliding scale never stabilizes. Mark 9:24 admits doubt inside belief. Matthew 7:21 rejects simple profession. John 3 stresses faith. James 2 demands works. One rulebook conflicts with another. Natural explanations cover origins and mind. Evolution accounts for human life. Modern cosmology models a universe without a personal creator. Neuroscience links moral judgment and spiritual highs to brain states. Randomized trials on intercessory prayer show no benefit versus controls, including the large STEP study. History shows creed policing harms people. Councils define orthodoxy, rulers punish dissent, crusades and inquisitions follow. Fear of hell drives compliance, not compassion. Atheism or agnosticism frees you from an invisible bar to clear. Meaning grows from action, love, and responsibility. Evidence guides choices. You own mistakes, learn, keep building. Alex chose progress over guilt. Purpose plus autonomy plus mastery correlates with well-being across many studies. Values-based goals beat guilt-driven rituals.
How about this? Yeah. What bothers you? There's got to be something out there that like.
I also have
People
another
wasting
question.
my time.
People wasting your time. That's a really good answer.
that's a
That's
good
a great
one,
answer. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the only thing I don't have a lot of.
This may seem like a silly question, but if you go to a restaurant and you order something, let's say you order a steak and you order it medium well, and it comes back medium rare.
Yeah.
Do you say something?
It's not worth his time.
No, I don't actually.
You don't.
No. Why would I? I don't care.
But at the same time, I was like, well, a lot of people would be anxious to say something, and I figured you probably wouldn't care about those emotions, right?
I wouldn't even have an emotion first. I mean, that's
Yeah,
such a
I
non.
wouldn't
Yeah,
care. I
yeah,
really
yeah. I mean, maybe
wouldn't
like we have a big ad campaign that's supposed to go out, and like I get all the creatives the day before, and it's supposed to launch. Like, would that annoy me? I'd be like, yes, but let's fix it. You know, like this is bad. We can't run this. Let's try again. You know. And in the end, it won't matter because we're all going to die, and this money is going to go back to the game. I'll give you this one analogy. This might be a good wrap up. So this is like my mental analogy that I don't know, makes sense to me, which is like if life were a game, right? And all of us are given a token to like enter like a casino because we're in Vegas, right? And so we all get a token, we enter the casino and we sit down at the table to play poker, right? And everybody's playing, everybody's got cards and all of, we're dealt cards. Everybody's dealt different cards and we got to play the hand we're dealt. And depending on our level of skill, we amass more and more chips throughout the game, right? And at the end of the game, the difference between the real world and the casino and the game of life, right? In the real world, you go and you can cash out your chips and you walk out with money and there you go. There's your day. But I feel like in the casino of life, you get tapped on the shoulder by the Grim Reaper and he says, your time's up. And then all your chips get pushed right back to the middle of the table. And then you leave the casino empty-handed because it was a fake game with fake rules that didn't matter. And so like we accumulate these chips that I'm just going to push back in the middle again that other people are going to play on. And like the reason that analogy became real for me is like I bought this piece of land in Austin and I was like, that's neat. And then I was like, how many people have owned this piece of land? It's like the guy before me owned it and the guy before him owned it and the guy before him owned it. And I was like, and they were like, this is mine. And then they die or they sell it and someone was like, this is mine. It's like, they're just chips that just get played with and they just get amassed and then they get redistributed. It just doesn't matter. Like death taxes everybody 100%. So like everyone's like estate planning. It's like, dude, 500 generations from now, like your offspring are, 500 to the, 0.5 or, 1/2 to the 500th power of like diluted. They're basically just humans at that point. So if your wealth somehow is big enough that it can be diluted that much and last that long, the people who own it are just humans. So they're just as close to me as you are. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter, right? And then the alternative is the people that I'm giving this to are just the ones that I care about are the immediate family. But then when people get resources that they didn't learn how to use or manage, then it destroys them because it's too much potential energy. They can't handle it, right? And so it's like, it's really for nothing. And so like, if you want, you can build something that you think is cool. But like at the end of the day, like we're just going to cash the chips in. So anyways, Alex's worldviews, but
Wow. It's a great analogy.
just
A lot to think about this one.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to rewatch this.
But like,
Yeah, you know what's funny? I was actually thinking I would
rewatch
never
this.
listen to podcasts over.
No, but
never.
this segment,
I would actually listen to this.
Yeah.
yeah, money, income, net worth, ooh.
Yeah.
Investing, indexes, savings accounts, what credit cards.
That's good.
Jeez, thank you so much.
No,
Thank you, Alex, for
This
coming
is-
on.
This has been an incredible podcast.
Yeah,
really.
I think so.
I appreciate you having me, and to the audience, like I know that a lot of the stuff that I say can be triggering, and I know that at different points in my life, if I had heard someone say what I'm saying in the position that I am, I would be offended, and I want to make it clear that it's not my intention to do that at all. It's just me sharing beliefs that, as I understand the world, and that is no way projection on you or how you see the world, etc. It's just this is how I see the world, and these are beliefs that serve me well. That helped me overcome all a lot of things that I thought mattered.
Alex is right to anchor on time. Wrong stake does not matter. Save energy for big decisions. Research on regret shows wasted time ranks high near life's end. Hedonic adaptation, research shows mood snaps back after wins or losses. Action beats rumination. His casino analogy holds. Death returns chips to the table. Estate data backs this. Most family wealth disappears by generation 3. Sudden wealth harms unprepared heirs. Studies link windfalls to higher addiction and depression. No afterlife scorekeeper needed. Meaning grows from projects you choose, people you love, work you do now. Stoics taught control over response, not outcomes. Buddhism teaches non-attachment. Both align with Alex's move away from guilt toward purposeful work. Christian texts give mixed signals on money and legacy. Matthew 6:19 warns against treasures on earth. 1 Timothy 5:8 demands provision for household. Proverbs 13:22 praises leaving inheritance to grandchildren. Guidance conflicts. Binary salvation fails here too. Who qualifies, the generous billionaire without faith, or the believer who neglects family duty? Alex's view fits observed life. Value flows from process, skill, service, and curiosity. Prioritize time, not status. Build, learn, help people around you. No fear of failing a cosmic test. Time is scarce. Spend time well.
Imagine you talk to the creator of the universe before birth and pick the person you get to become. You say, I want to be the most courageous. The creator replies and says, well, then I will give you monsters to terrify you so that you can conquer them. And you say, well, I want to be patient. Well, then I will make you work harder and longer so you can learn to wait. I want to be wise. And the creator replies, then I will give you failures that will crush your spirit so you can learn the value of judgment. You then say, sounds like a rough life. Can you give me a good life? The creator replies, I measure you by what you are at the end, not the fire and the hammer it took to make you. A good life isn't a life that's easy. A good life is a life that makes you into a good person. And that, my son, is a hard life.
You know, event or action occurred that make you felt that emotion.
If we believe that we have to, like, why should we?
Why should you feel that emotion?
Like, why should we process a traumatic event? Like, what does that mean?
Well, I do believe that there are, like, you know, things in your brain biologically that if they are deprived of something, or there's like some bad traumatic event or something like that, will affect your
so what makes
biological.
Traumatic versus non-traumatic.
I mean, I feel like the definition of the word trauma would probably.
But what would be the line between, like, okay, in, like, let's give an example of something terrible, right? Actually not, because it's a podcast and people might hate on Graham. So let's just say something bad happens that we describe as bad in this culture, right? In another culture, that might not be bad. It's trauma in this culture. It's not trauma in this culture. So if the circumstance is the same, why was it traumatic?
Circumstances weren't the same.
Why not?
Because the culture.
The facts were the same. Well, we describe the facts as changed, which means that we can choose to call something trauma.
But doesn't it make sense that people would be built up due to culture and environment?
40-year-old guy sleeps with a 15-year-old girl. Terrible, right? Rewind 200 years. 40-year-old guy sleeps with a 15-year-old girl. 100% normal, right? How is it trauma now and not trauma then? And mind you, like, this is not my statement. You have to pull an extreme example if we're going to talk about trauma to illustrate the concept, right? Mm-hmm. So if it's traumatic in one instance and not traumatic in another, then it means that we can basically change the cultural narrative that we're ascribing to our context and make it not traumatic.
That makes sense.
Right. Which means it didn't matter. Which means the only thing that matters is that you chose to make it meaningful.
But let's say like the passing of a parent or like a loved 100%. One or something like that.
If we think, like, we feel like we have a narrative that says, if I don't mourn, it means I didn't care about them, right? Mm-hmm. That's a statement of belief. I could say that if I don't mourn about them, it means I totally cared about them. Like, why does my mourning have any indication of how much I cared? They're non-correlates, right? But it's just because we have so many of these belief statements that, like, quote society, or things that we inherit, right? but we just choose to say that this is how life is. And so I think it's just like monitoring what those statements are. And so like one of my favorite sayings, probably like if I had one thing on my tombstone, it would be a permutation of a quote by Orson Scott Card, which is, we question all of our beliefs except for those that we truly believe and those we never think to question.
That's a good quote.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's like of course I'm opening to questioning my beliefs. It's like, what's trauma? Like when someone's like, I was traumatized, it's like, were you? Or do you just choose to label it as trauma and then now you fucked up the rest of your life because you call it trauma when 200 years ago it was life? And 1,000 years ago, having your parent killed in front of you was just nature, if you want to go biology, right? And so we just choose to create meaning around things. And so like at the end of the day, like end to end to end, bottom, root, all our brains do is just create and destroy meaning. And so we say, this is a threat, this is not a threat. We make like, we need to reinforce this behavior, we don't need to reinforce this behavior, all through meaning. Mm-hmm. And so if you can control what you deem meaningful, you can massively shift the odds in your favor because you don't need to ascribe meaning to.
Well, couldn't that be, let's say like 500 years ago, you see like a parent killed in front of you.
Yeah.
Isn't that because all you have in your mind is like food, shelter, water?
Sure.
And now that we have those things taken care of, our minds go to other places.
Sure.
Yeah.
I just don't think it changes the actual facts. So it's like there's stimulus response, right? And so like we get to control the response, we control the stimulus. And so like, was it it's either Seneca or Epictetus who's like, no one yells at a rock, right? And so it's like, if you are the rock, then like just it doesn't matter, right? Like you just like eventually like people just fuck off and just leave you alone. And so like, and if you see stimulus of life that way in terms of like how you deem things or label things traumatic or not traumatic or good or bad, you know what I mean? It's the same thing with, I'm sure with like the hate comments and whatnot. It's like, if you deem the comments of the fans as meaningful, then you will both care about them being positive and you will care about them being negative. But if they're not meaningful at all to begin with, then like, I don't think you can do either. I think you just either have to participate in both sides or you remove. That is also a belief statement, right? So like maybe you can. So, you know, interesting thoughts.
So how did you transition from, I'm assuming you used to care a little bit more about beliefs and stuff like that. How did you transition from that to now not caring? And like, did you have to completely change your mindset to where 100%. Your automatic response to things was just like, what are these chains of emotions and like the cultural constraints and stuff like that
100%.
That are making me feel this way?
Yeah.
Did you just switch that light switch, or do you still on occasion catch yourself slipping?
I just did right now. I just said that as a belief.
Right. That's what I figured.
100%. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think you systematically, you hear, like, that's why the talking is so important. Like, what words are we using? What do those words mean? Like, you say trauma, I'm like, define that. What do you mean by that? Which is why, like, when you hear really good writing that's academic, like the first few pages will be like, we're going to talk about this, and this is how we define this, and this is how we define this. It's like we're putting constraints around the words that we're using because they equate to thoughts. They're just buckets, right? That we like say a word like trauma, and like it means something different to all three of us. So it's like we have to agree on the definition before we can talk about it.
Alex centers everything on time, work, and mortality. Small annoyances fade. Energy goes to actions that move the needle. His casino frame holds. Death returns the chips. No cosmic bookkeeper is needed for meaning. Build skill. Serve people. Enjoy the work. Wealth studies show most fortunes dissolve by the third generation. Sudden windfalls often harm unprepared heirs. Outcomes match his point about focus and stewardship. The creator story he tells also lands without a deity. Growth follows friction. Psychology calls this post-traumatic growth, with decades of data from Tedeschi and Calhoun. Hard seasons can raise courage, patience, and wisdom. No invisible plan required. On death, reason stays firm. Epicurus argued fear of death makes life worse. Neuroscience ties experience to brain function. When brains stop, experience stops. Before birth, no awareness. After life, the same silence. Alex accepts this and moves forward. Scripture tension supports his exit. Mark 9:24 shows belief on a spectrum. Matthew 7:21 undercuts simple profession. Canon history shows councils and politics shaped texts. Thousands of manuscript differences exist. A moving target should not run your life. So he left. He chose evidence, agency, and work over guilt and creed policing. You can do the same. Audit beliefs by outcomes. Keep beliefs that build love, health, and service. Drop beliefs that burn time and breed fear.
You made a very interesting analysis of how people use or misuse God, but you made no argument about God himself. And by attacking the quote wicked unquote use of God does not at all address the existence of God.
Now, I didn't say that God was misused. I hope I wasn't so poorly understood by everybody. I said that the idea of God is a dictatorial one to begin with, the belief in a supreme, eternal, invigilating creator who knows what you think and what you do and cares about it and will reward or punish you and watches you while you sleep is, I think, a horrific belief, a man-made one. Grief, so it hadn't really sunk in on me that as you were being ordained, when I was 9, I was just getting out of there completely. I was 9 when I thought I saw through it, when my biology teacher told me that God was so good as to have made vegetation green because it was the color most restful to our eyes. And I thought, Mrs. Watts, this is nonsense. I knew nothing about chlorophyll or photosynthesis, nothing about the theory of evolution, nothing about adaptation, nothing of the sort. I just knew she'd got everything all wrong. And of course, the argument against faith, against religion, falls into two essential halves, not necessarily congruent, but I believe congruent. The first is, it's not true. Religion comes from the infancy of our species. I won't say race, because I don't think our species is subdivided by races. Infancy of our species, when we didn't know that the Earth went round the sun. We didn't know that germs caused disease. We didn't know when we were told in Genesis, you're given dominion over all creatures, that this did not include microorganisms, because we didn't know they were there. So you didn't know they had dominion over us. When diseases broke out, it was blamed on wickedness, or sometimes on the Jews, or if it was by Jews, on the Amalekites, or as you will. We didn't know anything about the nature of the Earth's crust, how it was cooling, earthquakes, storms, all of this were a mystery. Well, we are at least to that extent a reasoning species. Even a conspiracy theory is often better than no theory at all. The mind searches for form. We're now stuck with the forms that we found in our infancy, in our primitive, barbaric past. Well, that could be fine still. No nation can be without mythology or myth or legend. And there are people who say, well, it's not exactly true. Virgins don't conceive, okay. Bushes don't burn forever, although why that would be so impressive, I've never understood in many cases. Dead men don't walk, and so on and so on. Okay, you're right, it's not really true. It does come from a rather fearful period of the Dark Ages, but at least it's nice to believe it. It teaches good precepts. This, I think, is very radically untrue. I give in my book the example, which I'll give you now, of a person very much influential on my youth, and I know on the Reverend's too, Dr. Martin Luther King. My friend Taylor Branch's book about Dr. King, I would rather call him Doctor than Reverend, because I'm sorry to say I think it's a higher title of honor. Taylor Branch's trilogy about him is called Parting the Waters, The Pillar of Fire, and At Jordan's Edge. And everybody literate here knows the story of Exodus and understands what Dr. King meant when he demanded that his people be free of bondage. But if you think about it for a second, it's a very good thing that the good doctor was only using this metaphorically. If he'd really been invoking the lessons of Genesis and Exodus, he would have been saying that his people had the right to kill anyone who stood in their way, to exterminate all other tribes, to mutilate their children's genitalia, to make slaves of those they captured, to take the land and property of others, to engage in rather long and hideous and elaborate arguments about ox goring, and finally, which is the sentence that ends that, or the verse that ends that section of the book, should not suffer a witch to live, the warrant for witch burning. In other words, in these books, there are the warrants for genocide, for slavery, for the torture of children, for disobedience, for genital mutilation, for annexation, for rape, and all the rest of it. that it's a very good thing that this is man-made. There are those who say that they wish they could believe, and I suppose a decent atheist could say that if only for lack of evidence he wishes he or she could. I can't be among their number. I'm very glad it is not true that there is a permanent, unshakable, unchallengeable celestial supervision. A divine North Korea in which no privacy, no liberty is possible from the moment of conception, not just till the moment of death, but until well after. I've been to North Korea, and now I know what a prayerful state would look like. I know what it would be like to praise God from dawn till dusk. I've seen it happen. And it's the most disgusting and depressing and pointless and soulless thing you can picture. But at least with North Korea, you can die and you can leave. Christianity won't let you do that, because I mentioned another thing about the Old Testament. The Old Testament may have, any Jews and Christians who like it may like this too. They may have genocide, rape, racism, all the rest of the things I've mentioned, but it never mentions punishment of the dead. When you're done, when you're in the mass grave into which you've been thrown as an Amalekite, it's over. Not until gentle Jesus, meek and mild, is the concept of hell introduced. Eternal torture, eternal punishment for you and all your family for the smallest transgression. I have no hesitation in saying this is a wicked belief. I've also no hesitation in saying, and I mustn't trespass on the Reverend's time, that we don't need it in two senses. One is it's wicked. Two, we have and always have had a much superior tradition. We know that Democritus and Epicurus worked out in ancient Athens the world was made of atoms, that the gods did not exist and certainly took no interest in human affairs, and would be foolish to do so, and would be wicked if they did. We have the tradition that brings us through Galileo and Spinoza and Thomas Paine and Voltaire and Thomas Jefferson and Bertrand Russell and Albert Einstein, men of great wisdom and insight, by all means struck by the awe-inspiring character of our universe, by all means open to devotional music and architecture and poetry, by all means aware of the transcendent, but look through the Hubble telescope if you want to see something that is awe-inspiring. And don't look to blood-stained old myths. Now? Why now? Why am I doing this now, people ask? Well, I'll tell you why now, because in the last few years it's become impossible to turn a page of a newspaper without being, as the religious would say, offended. In other words, I don't think I sound self-pitying if I say that I'm offended that a cartoonist in a tiny democratic country in Scandinavia, Denmark, can't do his job without a death threat, and that no American magazine or newspaper would reprint those cartoons, either to elucidate the question or in solidarity. I'm offended that civil society in Iraq is being destroyed, leveled by the parties of God. I'm offended that people in this country believe that they have the right to advocate the teaching of garbage to children under the fatuous name of intelligent design. I believe that we're... I thought you'd never clap. Just as I believe that where religion ends, philosophy begins, where alchemy ends, chemistry begins, where astrology ends, astronomy begins, and now the people will say, well, let's give equal time to astrology in the schools. It's nonsense, dangerous and sinister nonsense. The Pope says, AIDS may be bad, but condoms are much worse. What kind of moral teaching is this? And how many people are going to die for such dogma? You see what I mean? I'll be very brief. There's an end to this, an end particularly to the cultural cringe that says that if someone can claim to be a religious spokesman, they are entitled to respect. I have to say it in your presence, sir. I think that the title Reverend is something people should be more concerned to live down than to live up to. Thank you.
When we look at history, it's clear that many core Christian claims collapse under basic evidence. The Genesis creation story says the earth was made in 6 days about 6,000 years ago, but geology, radiometric dating, and fossil records prove our planet is over 4.5 billion years old, and that life evolved over hundreds of millions of years. The Bible describes a global flood in Genesis 6 through 9, yet ice core samples from Greenland and Antarctica show uninterrupted layers of snow and ice dating back 100,000 years. No sign of a worldwide deluge. Scripture commands horrific acts. In 1 Samuel 15:3, God orders the slaughter of men, women, children, and animals. In Exodus 21:20-21, slavery is condoned outright. These are not moral foundations. They are relics of an ancient, tribal society. Science explains what religion once guessed at. Germ theory replaced the idea that disease is divine punishment. Evolution by natural selection, supported by DNA evidence, explains life's diversity far better than intelligent design. The Hubble telescope shows galaxies billions of light years away. Impossible in a 6,000-year-old universe. And Christian teachings still cause harm today. The Catholic ban on condoms worsened the AIDS crisis. Creationist lobbying undermines education. And religious intolerance fuels violence worldwide. When moral progress happens, abolition of slavery, women's rights, ending segregation, it's been driven by human reason and empathy, not by obeying Bronze Age texts.
I think that you made a very interesting analysis of how people use or misuse God, but you made no argument about God himself. And by attacking the quote wicked unquote use of God does not at all address the existence of God or non-existence of God. We are sitting in a room that, because of lights, we assume that there is electricity in the building. Electricity can light up a room or burn it down. It does not mean electricity does not exist because it burns the building down, or that it is inherently wicked. It is how people use it. So clearly, people have misused God as they've misused other things that are possibly positive. But its existence is not in any way proven or disproven by you giving a long diatribe on those that have mishandled and misused God, because there are many that you can cite that have acted in a way that shows the goodness of God. Your book, God Is Not Great, could be refuted by many that feel he is great or she is great, whatever way you relate to God. Science, to me, does not wipe away the existence of God, because science had to start somewhere. So to pick up mankind in its evolving state does not tell me where mankind began, how it became a long story of ordered steps. Well, who ordered them? Why do things follow such a natural progression? Who set the progress? And in fact, even the term wicked, if there is no God and if there is no supreme mechanism that governs the world, what makes right right or what makes wrong wrong? Why don't we just go by whoever's the strongest at any given period in history? Because nothing is wicked, because whoever's in power at the time would determine what is wicked and what is not wicked, because there's no real moral code, because there's nobody to judge that. So at one hand, we're going to argue God doesn't exist. On the other hand, we're going to call people wicked. Wicked according to who? And according to what? It would be based on whoever has the power at that time. So I think that the real thing that I'm interested in, Mr. Hitchens, is to really discuss the idea of God and the idea of a supreme being, and how creatures and creation have just by some great coincidence, an unexplained scheme, follows some order that just happened by itself. Something, some force, some overruling force had to set all of that pattern in, and it continues thousands of years later. Can you give a million examples of where people have misused that, where they've distorted it, where in the name of God or North Korea or other tragedies have happened? Yes. In terms of the civil rights movement, it was absolutely fueled by a belief in God and a belief in right or wrong. And had not there been this belief that there was a right and a wrong, civil rights movement that you alluded to or that you referred to would not have existed, because what made it wrong for people to be slaves? What made it wrong for humans to be treated unequally? Because there was nobody to say that they were all equal. It was whoever had the strength. But at the end, what is refreshing is that you are a man of faith. Because any man that at this date still has faith that there are weapons of mass destruction in Iraq has more faith than any religious person I know.
Sharpton's electricity analogy fails because we can directly measure electricity. It has observable properties, equations like Ohm's law, and can be demonstrated on demand. God has no such measurable evidence. Simply pointing to order in the universe isn't proof of design. Complex order can emerge naturally from physical laws. Snowflakes form intricate patterns without a designer. Evolution explains life's diversity through cumulative natural selection, not preset ordered steps. The first cause argument ignores that physics shows how matter and energy behave without invoking a supernatural agent. Quantum fluctuations can produce particles from a vacuum, and cosmology explains the universe's development from the Big Bang onward. As for morality, history shows moral codes predate Christianity. The Code of Hammurabi, 1750 BCE, set laws long before the Bible. Morality is rooted in empathy, cooperation, and the social contracts that allow humans to thrive, not divine decree. If morality required God, then God's own commands in Scripture, like ordering genocide in 1 Samuel 15:3, would be good, yet by today's standards they're horrific. The civil rights movement wasn't exclusively powered by religion. Leaders like Bayard Rustin drew on secular human rights ideals, and morality is equally championed in secular societies today. A belief system isn't validated by the good some people do in its name, just as belief in Zeus or Odin wasn't proven by acts of kindness in their followers.
The belief that there were weapons of mass destruction, or rather the conviction that Saddam Hussein was interested in weapons of mass destruction, you could, I suppose, describe as an argument from design. In other words, he'd had them before, he'd known how to conceal them, he'd used them several times, he seems to be prepared to risk his entire political career on the idea of reacquiring them. I would say that was not a belief that had no evidence, and I would say that anyone who treated him as if he was innocent on the subject would be a sap, actually, would be my short word for it. Second, on the civil rights movement, I expected you to be more assertive. I don't know what Dr. King's private convictions about religion were. I know that he studied Hegel, I know that he studied Marx, I know that among his very close entourage were a large number of secular socialists and communists. You know their names too. Stanley Levinson is probably the best known, but among the black civil rights leadership, Bayard Rustin, secular socialist, Philip Randolph, secular socialist trade union leader. These were the building blocks for the March on Washington, as was Victor Reuther and many others. The belief that it is illegal as well as evil to keep black Americans in subjection does not require any supernatural endorsement. It had been proved repeatedly in law and in morality and in ethics, and demonstrated in practice. The only thing that had always been consistently justified by the churches was initially slavery, the right to hold someone as a slave, biblically warranted, and the right to keep the races separate, which is endorsed by a church that, just to give a contemporary example, one of the current candidates for the Republican nomination is a member of a church, the so-called Mormon Church of Latter-day Saints, that until 1965 had it as an article of faith that the Bible separates the sons of Ham and makes them lesser. Well, I don't have to discredit a text like that because I don't think it has any authority. So in a sense, I return the question to you. Now, I didn't say that God was misused. I hope I wasn't so poorly understood by everybody. I said that the idea of God is a dictatorial one to begin with. The belief in a supreme, eternal, invigilating creator who knows what you think and what you do and cares about it and will reward or punish you and watches you while you sleep is, I think, a horrific belief. A man-made one, fortunately. I'm very glad there's no evidence for it. In case I was misunderstood, let me assert again, I think it's innately an awful belief. However, the cleverest theologian, and have been some, has never been able to demonstrate that such a person exists. It's impossible to do so. It's not possible either for me to demonstrate conclusively that no such person exists. That cannot be done either. But one thing can be done. A person who claims not to know only that this person exists, a task beyond our brain, but to claim to know his or her, I accept your correction, Reverend, mind to say, I know, because I'm in holy orders, what this entity wants you to do, what he wants you to eat, who he wants you to go to bed with, and how he wants you to go to bed with them. What you may read, in what associations in private you may form, what thoughts you may have. That person is out of the argument now, it seems to me. We know that no one knows that. So the claim made by the religious that they know God, they know his mind, and they can tell us what to do in his name is, I think, exploded. Further, it is not argued by my side, at any rate, or by no one I know on it, that our presence here on the planet is something that is susceptible of a smooth, logical, reasonable explanation. To the contrary, we are still very much in doubt as to precisely how we came to be human and to separate ourselves from some of our common ancestors. And, we also know that of the species that have been on this small planet, in this tiny solar system, since the beginning of measurable time, of the number that were ever in existence, more than 98.9% have become extinct. A certain solipsism, I think, is required to believe that we, as a resulting species, are somehow the center of the created cosmos. This is not modesty, as the Christians call it. It's not humility. It's an unbelievably arrogant claim to make. But at least it makes up for the other claim we're supposed to put up with, which is, well, yes, but we're also miserable sinners conceived in filth and doomed to abject ourselves. Both of these positions are too extreme, too strenuous, too fanatical. Both of them reinforce each other in unpleasant ways, and both should be outgrown by us.
Hitchens dismantles the idea that morality or justice requires divine authority. The civil rights movement wasn't purely a religious project. Key figures like Bayard Rustin and A. Philip Randolph were secular humanists. The legal and ethical basis for ending segregation and slavery came from constitutional law, Enlightenment philosophy, and universal human rights, not the Bible. In fact, churches were some of the strongest defenders of slavery, citing verses like Ephesians 6:5 and 1 Peter 2:18 to justify it, and many Christian denominations opposed racial integration well into the 20th century. He's right that the concept of an all-seeing, all-judging God is not just unsupported by evidence, it's dictatorial by design. No one can prove God exists, but religion claims to know his mind, his rules, and how everyone should live. That's not humility, that's authority without evidence. Science openly admits it doesn't yet have every answer about human origins, but it has uncovered far more than religion ever did. From fossil records tracing human evolution to the staggering fact that over 98% of all species have gone extinct, showing we're not the center of creation. To believe otherwise is not modest faith, but human arrogance wrapped in theology. If we can build moral systems, laws, and compassion without appealing to invisible authority, why keep clinging to a worldview that's historically fueled slavery, segregation, and censorship? What do you think? Is morality stronger when it's grounded in reason and evidence rather than divine command? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more debates and deep dives.
Unbaptized children don't go there forever in isolation and loneliness, after all, because they didn't get the sprinkle of water. You can relax. No, you can't. Millions of parents thought that's where their dead children have gone, ladies and gentlemen, for hundreds of years. Miserable, frightened, humiliated, upset. They believed it. It was real to them. It was cruel to tell them this nonsense to begin with. It's even more cruel to say, after all, that it's not true, but never mind. After hundreds of years of that, we have to apologize for a few other things too. The Inquisition, sorry about that. The role of the church in the final solution, maybe a mistake. The Crusades, no, we wouldn't do it the same way now. The massacre of Byzantine and Eastern Orthodox Christians, up till the very recent past in the Balkans, we owe them an apology. There's quite a lot to be taking on, isn't it? But never mind, we're getting ready to be infallible all over again. This stuff is not to be believed. What's the worldview of the dog? The dog is given by you food, shelter, water, love, affection, and it thinks you're God. The cat is given food, warmth, shelter, love, by it thinks it's God. religion makes the following appeal to us, which is why I say it poisons everything, because it goes to the deep nature of our self-respect and our humanity and our integrity. It makes the following bid to us. It says, you are born sinful. You're born guilty. You're guilty of crimes that were committed before you were born. You are not able to evade them. Your sin is original. You're made from dust, or in the Quran, from a clot of blood. Your creator is not in a very good mood with you, and there's no reason why he should be, given what a piece of excrement you basically are. That's the masochistic element of it. But after this thoroughgoing abjection, thoroughgoing demand that you throw aside all your self-respect, you're told there is, however, some redeeming news. The universe is designed with you in mind. The cosmos cares what happens to you. And if you will continue to abject yourself like a serf in front of God, you may hope for the forgiveness of sins, for eternal life, and for a divine plan. In other words, the maximum appeal to the abject, to the servile in you, and the maximum appeal to the self-centered and the egomaniac. Not a very wholesome way to begin a discussion about the main questions, such as why are we here? Who are we? What are we here for? What is the just city? How would it look like? What is the meaning of life? It's begun by a horrible lecture from a dictator. And you're then further told that if you do not bow the knee to a celestial dictatorship, unalterable, unchangeable, unappealable to, if you don't believe in that, you would have no means of telling right from wrong. How would you know how to do the right thing or avoid the wrong if you were not being told by a celestial dictatorship? Once again, an absolutely central attack on any concept that we might have of our own integrity, dignity, and self-respect. How would Huck Finn know? Admittedly, he's a fictional character, but then, so most of the people I'm going to be discussing from Moses onwards. How does Huck Finn know that he's not to betray his friend Jim? He's not to give him back. He's not to give him up to the people who are hunting for him. How does Mark Twain know that we will like Huck when he refuses this? What does Huck know? The law is against him. The church is against him. All the preachments of religion and customary law are against him. He thinks that if he refuses the demand to give up his slave friend, he's going to go straight to hell. That's what he thinks, but he still does the right thing. As we might all hope to do, as we must all hope to do, if we were tested much less than that. It's innate in us. Religion gets its morals from us. We know what the right thing is without being told by a celestial dictatorship. If it were otherwise, this is why I say I'm an anti-theist, not an atheist. If it were otherwise, what would the situation be? Every one of our waking and sleeping thoughts would be under permanent surveillance at all times from the moment of our conception, according to some at any rate, certainly birth, until not just when we died, because that's when the real fun would begin. Now, it's as if those who wish it to be true, which I do not, you can be an atheist and wish that there was a God. Many atheists I know do wish it was true. Why do I not? Because I don't want to live in the celestial North Korea. I'm one of the few people who's been to, as a writer, to North Korea and Iran and Iraq too, to all the axis of evil countries in the last few years. When I was young and was told that this is what paradise will be like, you get to praise God all the time, forever, and continue thanking him for everything he's doing for you, sometimes with the aid of musical instruments. But that's the thing, that's what paradise will be like, everlasting praise. I used to think, sounds like hell to me. But I also wondered, what would it be like? I couldn't quite picture it. An attempt is made in the movie Bedazzled, the first version, to try and convey how ghastly it would be. Well, now I know. I've been to a state where there's worship from dawn till dusk and thanking for everything you've got, every tiny crumb. And there's what you get, too, is the tiny crumb. Nothing but thanks, nothing but praise. It's a state where Not everybody knows this. Kim Jong-il is not the absolute dictator of North Korea. He's only the head of the party and of the North Korean army. The head of the state, the president, is his late father, who's been dead for some 15 years, Kim Il-sung. He's still the president, and he's the president, if you pardon the expression, for life, even though he's, as it were, passed on, ceased to be, joined the choir in Visibule, turned up his toes. He's an ex-president. You could call it a necrocracy, a thanatocracy, a mausolocracy. And it's also, you'll notice, just one short of a trinity, because the son is the reincarnation of the father. That's what it would be like if this horrible Bronze Age Palestinian myth was true. Unending, eternal, unchallengeable, unchangeable slavery. Who wants it to be true? That's my first question to myself. I'll answer it later. And to you, since I haven't got a debate partner, and to you, ladies and gentlemen, why would anyone want it to be true? If I don't remember to ask myself, isn't secular dictatorship sometimes just as bad? If I don't remember to ask myself this, promise me one of you will, because we can't skip that point. Okay. Why is it wonderful to be here in Seattle and in North America having this discussion at this moment? Because everybody in America believes that everybody else is a strong believer. Everybody believes the opinion polls that say everyone else goes to church and believes in Satan more than they believe in Darwin. Everyone else thinks you can't run for office unless you bow the knee. And this is not true, and your presence here partly materializes my belief that it isn't, as did my swing through the South, where thousands of people came to each stop and all looked around themselves thinking, God, I thought I was the only atheist in this town till I got here. We had to move out of the bookstore in North Carolina into a church to fill up the oversburns. And the pastor said to me, he said, I shouldn't be telling you this. This made my day, was it? He said, I shouldn't be telling you this. This damn church has never been this full. And North Carolina can be a hard row to hoe for an unbeliever. I'm here to tell you, but it's not that tough. Well, I thought, because the Lord sent me the death of Jerry Falwell that week.
When Hitchens points out that religion begins by telling us we're born guilty, he's right. The doctrine of original sin comes straight from Augustine in the 4th century, not from Jesus himself. Even Paul's letters in Romans 5:12 were stretched later to mean all humans inherit Adam's guilt. That means Christianity built much of its foundation on a man-made interpretation, not divine truth. Science also shows morality doesn't come from a celestial dictator. Evolutionary biology explains empathy and cooperation as survival traits. Franz de Waal's studies on primates show chimpanzees comfort the distressed and share food without any concept of God or sin. Morality is in our biology. History proves the same. Societies like ancient China and India developed moral codes, Confucian ethics, Buddhist compassion, completely separate from Christianity. They didn't need the Bible to know murder or theft was wrong. Even the Bible undercuts its own claim. In Genesis 3, Adam and Eve are punished for seeking knowledge, not for committing an actual crime. And in Exodus, God orders genocide against whole peoples, including children. If morality comes from God, why does his law so often conflict with our innate sense of justice?
Turn a page of your newspaper any day you like. See what the parties of God are doing to Iraqi society to drag it down to the level of Afghanistan or Somalia, the last two countries where the parties of God had it all their own way. Look next door to Iran, where people who believe in a tooth fairy figure called the hidden Imam, the 12th Imam, whose immediate advent is expected, which will, it won't surprise you to hear, bring about a reign of universal peace and justice when it comes. Wonder where they picked up that idea. But perhaps as a sign of a lack of confidence in this belief, Mr. Ahmadinejad is currently building a new boulevard into the center of Tehran, on which to welcome the motorcade of this Imam when he returns from his excursion. Just in case that doesn't work or doesn't happen, why not pirate and plagiarize some nuclear weapons? They know nothing about science themselves. They couldn't do physics. They don't care about the beauties of science. The wonders of the cosmos don't appeal to them at all. But they can probably steal, have stolen, the ingredients to make a nuclear weapon. So we now have what we've long feared we're going to have, the coincidence between an apocalyptic ideology and, or rather, should I say, a messianic ideology and an apocalyptic weapon. It's going to happen now. It'll happen very soon. Well, suck on that for a second. I've already said what the crazed messianic settlers in the neighboring or not far off West Bank are doing, and who their best friends in America are, the Falwellites and Robertson clones, who think it's amusing to try and propose that, with the help of sources I gather in Washington state, that stultifying nonsense be taught to our children in American schools in the year 2007 as equal time. So, hey kids, the chemistry class is over, now get ready for the alchemy period. Astronomy's over, you'll be glad to hear. It's a hard subject, but cheer up, after the break, astrology teacher will be on the scene. What is this nonsense? How can anyone put up with it for a single second? The evil attempt to make children ignorant and frightened. That is also augmented very strongly by another priesthood, which has been teaching them about hellfire and limbo, though they've just dropped limbo at the last minute, as the Pope did recently notice. Limbo's over now. Unbaptized children don't go there forever in isolation and loneliness, after all, because they didn't get the sprinkle of water. You can relax. No, you can't. Millions of parents thought that's where their dead children had gone, ladies and gentlemen, for hundreds of years. Miserable, frightened, humiliated, upset. They believed it. It was real to them. It was cruel to tell them this nonsense to begin with. It's even more cruel to say, after all, that it's not true, but never mind. After hundreds of years of that, we have to apologize for a few other things too. The Inquisition, sorry about that. The role of the church in the final solution, maybe a mistake. The Crusades, no, we wouldn't do it the same way now. The massacre of Byzantine and Eastern Orthodox Christians, up till the very recent past in the Balkans, we owe them an apology. There's quite a lot to be taking on, isn't it? But never mind, we're getting ready to be infallible all over again. This stuff is not to be believed. And you live in a country where you don't have to, and mustn't be intimidated by the supposed strength of illusions like this, or the people who peddle them. Where I was very kind to mention that I recently took my oath as an American citizen at the Jefferson Memorial in Washington, D.C. Actually, it was on the 13th of April, which is his birthday and also mine. And I'm in a small way his biographer, and I was able to arrange to take the oath at the tidal basin by his memorial. And I made a little speech about the Virginia Statute on Religious Freedom, which is the basis of the tremendous First Amendment to our Constitution, that guarantees, as you know, that there can be no clerical meddling in our public and political life. And the shorthand phrase for that was uttered by the president in a letter that he wrote to the Baptists of Danbury, Connecticut, seeking refuge from persecution. From the Congregationalists of Danbury, Connecticut, by the way, it's who they were afraid of, in which he said there will be a wall of separation forever on this point. So I now have a new slogan for you. Mr. Jefferson, build up that wall. And I believe it's entirely possible that we can construct a cement here between what is patriotic, what is decent, what is rational, and what is not faith-based. I think it can be done, and I think it can start here. Okay. Enough from me. What about my debating partner? What has he got to say to this? Well, how would you be, Mr. Hitchens, how would you be moral if it wasn't for God? How would you know what morality was? What's your warrant for saying what's right and wrong? I always politely pause at this point as if I've never heard this nonsense before. Okay, so I am wrong when I get a sense of satisfaction from giving a pint of blood. It comes from nowhere. I don't lose the pint. I get it back after a cup of tea. And I lie down, but someone else gets a pint of blood they may very well need. A great little transaction. I don't do enough of it. And I have a rare blood group myself, and I might one day want the same person, or someone else rather, to do the same for me. But it's not just a utilitarian transaction. I positively enjoy doing it. Is this from nowhere? I certainly don't know of any heavenly reason, I think, yet. All right, if that's not good enough for you, By the way, give blood whenever you can. It's a noble thing to do. It's the right thing to do. And you may need some blood one day yourself. And you shouldn't be ashamed of the fact that this comes from human solidarity, without which we wouldn't be here in the first place or able to have a language to discuss this in. But all right. Think of my Jewish ancestors, such as they were, hobbling around in the desert. I don't believe a word of the story. Even Israeli archaeology has completely and conclusively disproved the story of Exodus, as is detailed at some length in my book. There was no such presence in Egypt. There was no exile. There was no wandering. There was a lot of massacre and murder and theft, but then there always is when religious tribes are walking around. Let's assume the story's true. Let's assume it. Am I to be insulted by being told that my ancestors did not know until they got to Sinai that perjury and murder and theft were not kosher? Up till then, they thought those are the things we like best. It's a bit of a facer to get all this way and then to have someone tell us that's not on anymore. No, we all have to, I'll repeat myself, we all have to have more self-respect than that. They wouldn't have got that far or anywhere. They would never have been written about or heard of if they'd been under any other impression. Religion gets its morality from us. We know innately. You don't have to teach a child the golden rule. You sometimes have to reinforce it a bit, but you don't have to teach the principles.
Hitchens is right to warn about Iran's hidden imam. Messianic cults always end in bloodshed. The Taiping Rebellion in China killed over 20 million when a man claimed to be Christ's brother. Now imagine that same mindset with nuclear weapons. A dangerous mix of prophecy and apocalyptic technology. He's also correct about religion sabotaging science. The 2005 Dover trial proved intelligent design was theology, not science. Putting astrology beside astronomy or alchemy beside chemistry doesn't teach balance. It cripples education. Data shows states with weaker science standards score far worse in STEM. The Catholic reversal on limbo in 2007 is another example. For centuries, parents were told their unbaptized children suffered forever, then suddenly, never mind. That isn't divine wisdom, it's cruelty. The same goes for the Inquisition, Crusades, Holocaust silence, and Balkan massacres. Endless apologies from an infallible institution. Jefferson understood this. That's why he demanded a wall of separation between church and state. History shows it's the only safeguard against clerical power poisoning politics. And morality? We don't need God for that. Neuroscience proves empathy is hardwired in the brain. Anthropology shows cooperation and fairness existed in tribes long before Scripture. Even the Bible admits it. In Genesis 20, the pagan king knows lying and adultery are wrong while Abraham deceives. Morality comes from human solidarity, not from God. Religion only claimed the credit after the fact, and often corrupted it.
Same with the New Testament. How do we know this? Because the story of the Good Samaritan is told by the alleged Nazarene in whose existence I also do not believe. But he talks of a person who went out of his way on the road from Jerusalem to Jericho to help a fellow creature in need. Very obviously, this man cannot have been a Christian because it's the young Jesus talking about it. He knows the story already. He's able to tell people that's the way you should behave if you see people in trouble. He never says you need divine permission to do this or a divine warrant to do it. It's ordinary human ethics. And to say that it wouldn't be part of us, part of our warp and our weft and our woof, if it wasn't for divine permission, is to make ourselves into serfs. So I propose we repudiate that and, as it were, stand on our own 2 feet a bit more. Now, speaking of serfdom, well, Mr. Hitchens, isn't it the case that in the last century, some of the worst atrocities, if not the worst of all, were perpetrated by atheists and secularists? Is this not the fact? Very serious question. I have a whole chapter about it in my book. Shall I read it all to you? No, I won't do that. It's available at fine bookstores everywhere. And will be available after this show, where I'll be very polite to anyone who has a receipt. but not to anyone else. Someone asked me the other day, "Are you a materialist?" I said, "Are you joking?" Yes. This is America. Well, take the cases that are before us, the most notorious ones. In the case of fascism, the movement that coined the term totalitarianism, that actually put it into circulation. Religion being, in my view, implicitly totalitarian with its admiration of an absolute, unchallengeable ruler, there's no other way to describe the fascist movement, beginning in Spain, Portugal, Italy, spreading through Croatia, Austria, large parts of Germany, Hungary, Slovakia, except to say it was a movement of the Roman Catholic Rite. That's what it was. It was a completely Christian movement. All of its leaders were believing Christians. It had an official concordat with the Vatican. The Nazi puppet state leader of Slovakia was actually a man in holy orders. General Franco was very nearly baptized in his rule by that. Anyone can look this up. The church has never ceased to apologize for it, and nor should it. And after the war was over, they helped many of these people escape and begin constructing regimes of a similar model in South America after 1945. No wonder they can't stop apologizing. Nothing secular about that. German National Socialism, not quite the same, I have to say. It's true that the Vatican signed a treaty with Hitler the week he was installed in power. And it was for him the first and most important treaty he ever signed, the Concordat with the Vatican, and neither of them ever broke it. It's also true to say that in Mein Kampf he praises the Catholic Church and never left it, and has nothing but contempt for atheism. It's also true that the Pope ordered that his birthday, the Führer's birthday, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, be celebrated from the pulpit every year, every April, which it was, to the very end. It's also true that 25% of the members of the SS, this we know from Catholic historians, were confessing Catholics, ones who went to confession, and that no one was ever threatened with excommunication for their role in the Endlösung, as the Germans call the Shoah, or the final solution. The excommunication was only used by the church politically after the war, when you were told you'd be excommunicated if you voted for the Communist Party. And it is true that Joseph Goebbels was excommunicated from the Catholic Church. But do you want to know why? Do you know why? He's married a Protestant. Married a Protestant. That's what it took to be. Next, you'll know he didn't eat fish on a Friday or something. No, excuse me, they have their standards, okay? But it is also true that Hitler sought to replace Christianity as the state religion and would have preferred an Aryan Nordic blood myth with himself as the centerpiece of it. There's no question about that. And that many brave Christians had to die on that proposition. No one can deny that. But there's nothing secular about National Socialism. And of the third partner in that revolting alliance, that of Japan, the leader is not just a man of God, but a God himself, for whom people were prepared to immolate themselves and others. The late Emperor Hirohito. While I'm at it, when his son was sent to Oxford University, this is a digression, but why not? He was sent to Magdalen College in the 30s, and the Japanese embassy sent up a team of people to see the warden of Magdalen College, Oxford. Say, are you sure you're ready to receive the Crown Prince? They said, yeah, we're ready. He's got a nice room. We have a good tutor. Apparently his English is very good. We're looking forward very much to having him as the Japanese ambassador. Well, it's just we want to be sure you understand. You're calling him Crown Prince. Of course, that is his title. But you do realize that his father in our country is not thought of just as an emperor, but as God. Do you understand that? The warden of Magdalen College said, I think you'll find we're quite used to having the sons of famous people at Oxford. Anyway, don't know what brought that on. Don't know quite what made me go to that discussion. Anyway, there's nothing secular about an empire whose military ideology, by the way, was that of Zen Buddhism, for those of you who think the Eastern path is more contemplative. Its official ideology, as with the dictatorship in Burma today, is Zen Buddhism. There's nothing secular about that. So I think that clears up this frequently asked question on that side of the ledger.
Hitchens ends by exposing a tired but dishonest argument that atheists caused the worst atrocities of the 20th century. But history doesn't back this up. Fascism? Rooted in Christian nationalism. Franco, Salazar, and Mussolini were all devout Catholics backed by the Vatican. Hitler's regime signed a concordat with the Catholic Church in 1933, his first international agreement, and he remained a baptized Catholic until death. Even worse, the Church never excommunicated any Nazi for their role in the Holocaust, but Goebbels was excommunicated for marrying a Protestant. 25% of SS members were practicing Catholics, according to Catholic historians, and the Church helped many escape to South America after the war through the rat lines, with full Vatican cooperation. And Japan? Not atheist either. Its emperor was literally worshipped as a living god, and its military was infused with Zen Buddhist ideology, not secular values. These regimes weren't atheist. They were authoritarian theocracies or cults of divine leadership, no different from the religious despotisms they mirrored. As for morality, Hitchens points to the Good Samaritan, someone who helped a stranger not out of obedience to a god, but out of basic human decency. That story itself, told by Jesus, proves morality predates Christianity. You don't need divine command to know that helping someone in need is right. Now it's your turn. Do you believe religion is the source of morality, or is it something deeper, something human? Let us know in the comments below. Like this breakdown? Give it a thumbs up. Join the conversation. And don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into reason, history, and ideas that matter.